Yes, I am here, and we'll be ready to start in just about a minute.
Okay, yep, just pop on whenever you're ready. Thank you. I messaged everyone. I don't have Commissioner Riley's cell phone number, but I did email him, and there's Commissioner Intagliata. Hi, Scott.
Oh, great. Nope, you're on mute, Scott.
Hello, Commissioner Ingracia.
Hello, good day. Alderman Browning's going to pop on. He said he'd be ready in just a moment, and I've messaged Alderwoman Spencer and Commissioner Riley.
Very good. I'm gonna go grab some water real quick.
Okay, that's great.
And I am ready whenever you are.
Great. Commissioner Intagliata will be right back.
Okay. I hope you all are enjoying the beautiful weather today.
Loving it. Loving it.
No one in our office knows that it's nice outside. We've all just decided. So I guess we should get out there at some point soon.
Yeah, I'll open the window at least.
We don't have one of those.
I share your pain.
Yes, you do. You're in my old office.
It doesn't look like we have anybody else on the call other than the participants, no attendees, correct? Okay.
That is correct.
All right, great, thanks.
Oh, there we go. He just rolled right on the screen.
Yeah, and Commissioner Riley is here too. Wonderful.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your patience.
No worries. Well, should we get started? One of the things that came up at the last commission meeting that I just want to make sure we're cognizant of, and I don't think it happened on this, but I know that we have a working spreadsheet that we've all been, that many of us have been using to keep track of some of our conversations and dropping notes in. I know it was mentioned, I believe by the chair, that she received an inquiry about documents being shared or made available to the public. I don't think it was anything from this meeting, but I chatted with Commissioner Riley at the end of the commission meeting on Monday, and I just want to make sure that just in case we decide to screen share anything, I would say that anything that we decide that we put up on the screen as screen sharing that we all get to look at is probably something that we should make available to the public. So if we're not screen sharing it and it's just a working document behind the scenes for us, I think that that's fine. And I don't think that we have been screen sharing that spreadsheet, but I just want to be mindful of that so that we're not keeping things for the public.
We
unintended.
did share the spreadsheet in a previous session, actually.
Okay.
And to be fair, Travis, depending on how Anthony feels, but I don't have any concern about even our most recent round of emails with proposed amendment language if it goes on the website. Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know if we'll draw thousands of viewers, but our future biographers will certainly want to know when it got posted. So Yeah. Hey.
Our future biographers.
Yeah, when Alderman Browning becomes president, this meeting will be writ large in his biography. So,
I have no plans to run for any higher office at this time.
it's not Sherman-esque. So,
The perfect answer. Um, what should we tackle today? I mean, I know we have the two buckets of language, Scott, that you shared at the last commission meeting, that we'll probably want to start putting some greater detail around, or at least have ready to go by February 19th. So it's in the folder, or February 20th, since it's a holiday. So it's in the folder and ready for discussion in early March.
Do you mind if I pop in really quickly?
Yes.
If we could consider just having a conversation with Alderman Browning first to get his
Sure.
thoughts on suggested changes, and maybe we can do some of the additional
Yeah.
business once he's had his time here.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks.
Wonderful. So, Michael, we don't have like a prescribed agenda for this. They've been just kind of informal conversations to date. So if you wouldn't mind just starting off with any concerns or pieces that you think are important for the working group to be focused on. We are charged with the Board of Aldermen itself, that article of the charter, but obviously if there's anything else, we are, I think, one of the only groups that's interviewing elected officials at the board. So we're happy to hear any other pieces of the charter that you think are important for us to be paying attention to.
Absolutely. Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start with, specific to the Board of Aldermen. I think I've heard in past discussions that this group has had about considering at-large seats, as well as considering changing the election dates. I would like to share my perspective on that, which is from somebody who's recently run for office and knocked a lot of doors. I think that changing the election dates has the potential to make elections more expensive, and thus lock out, candidates of lesser income levels. The same goes for at-large seats. At-large elections are incredibly expensive to run, and you can look at the recent president of the Board of Aldermen race, not the uncontested one, but the contested one. And you can also look at numbers in other cities. Right now, it costs about $60,000 to $80,000 to run for a simple ward-wide seat. That's on par with a state representative level election. Making it an even larger territory would absolutely put elections in the hands of moneyed interests and not in the hands of people who are really seeking to be supported by grassroots donations. So that would be one pushback I'd have on that idea. The other effect of the at-large seats, I think the intention that I heard was that we want to have people who are more city-wide focused. And while that, is a desirable outcome, I do think that we can achieve that in other ways. And that the effect of creating at-large seats or even having switching systems, there's already election fatigue in the city. And I experienced that recently when running for my seat, where we'd knock doors during the primary, quickly turn around and have the general, and people would be like, why am I seeing you again so soon? So it can get overwhelming, but my focus would like to be on how do we make sure that people can run for office, how we can get fresh faces in, and I'm saying this as an incumbent, right? But I'm saying, like, how can we make sure that it's easier for people to get in? Because from my perspective, I was not a politico. I was not somebody who is related to anybody, previous administrations or anybody else in the city. I had to break into the system, and that would not be possible for people if elections were to become prohibitively expensive. Same goes with moving the dates. If you move it to be on the same dates as federal elections, now as a candidate, I or anyone else would be competing with federal candidates and much larger candidates for the same print shops, for the same airtime, for all the different aspects of an election and how we reach voters. You'd certainly get more participation, but I think you'd have less educated participation. You'd have people who were voting for aldermen who really just came to vote for congressperson or president. And that could lead to certainly a different shift in politics. But I do think right now we do have a fairly engaged population when it comes to local elections, even if it's not the most participatory.
Appreciate that input, Alderman. I guess the part of what is driving that is that just in general, it's hard to complain that more people voting is ever a bad thing. So, and I think you probably appreciate that. The other piece is that there's an enormous savings to doing it on a federal schedule to the city. And then I think a second tier bit of importance there is that some of the other suggestions we're considering is making it easier to get an initiative on the ballot. And so we think that does speak directly to that concern about making politics affordable. Unless you're a moneyed interest, nobody puts an initiative on the ballot, and we think Move Action should have every right to put something on the ballot as Greater St. Louis Inc. And so we think that part of our suggestion is to make it easier for that. There were a number of us on city referenda. We couldn't remember a referenda against a bill that had been passed, not in my lifetime, and which takes up a pretty good long voting period. And when you look at how hard it is to get it onto the ballot, how expensive, so we think that that levens your cost concern a bit, we hope. So.
Yeah, and I'm certainly open to the benefits of doing that. I think that there's certainly pros and cons. I just want to share my concern as a candidate that, you know, it is already fairly expensive to run these races, and there could be a detrimental effect to people's ability to run when they're competing for all that stuff with the larger named candidates who are certainly tapping into larger money sources as well. That's always the struggle is, you know, we want people to participate, we want people to vote, and I do agree with making it easier for people to vote, making it so that more people can participate. But I also want to make sure that we keep the integrity of our local elections and aren't opening it up to just have you know, congressional level candidates running for local office, because that's all we can afford to have.
Thank you for your feedback, Alderman Brown. I appreciate what you shared with us. I want to follow up on something that you mentioned regarding the primary and the general. Folks saying, why are we seeing you again so soon? Are you recommending that we eliminate the primary, that we separate primary and the general so that there's some more time between the two? What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't given too much thought to that, to be honest with you. I think just my initial reaction is that while the time period is fine, that was more in comment to having at-large seats rotating with district specific seats and the amount of elections that would cause and the confusion with voters. I think we just changed the rules and people are still getting used to it. I'd be really hesitant to change the rules again so quickly, just to avoid, you know, more confusion. But I think for the most part, it worked well. The primary is essential if you have more than two candidates. And the Board of Aldermen recently corrected the issue if there was only two candidates. So I think the system is fixed for now. But certainly there was that flaw in the last election where two candidates ran and then two candidates ran, and it was like, why are we doing this again? But whenever there's more than two, it makes sense to have that whittling down so that we can really have a focus on the issues. And for what it's worth, I think approval voting has really led to people having the ability to select a candidate who's much more in line with their beliefs. I think that's been a success for the city.
Alderman Brownie, I wanted to ask a quick question about another point that came up with regard to moving it to the to November and more of the federal cycle. It has to do with the amount of time between winning the general and getting sworn in, and then the budget season. It's way too compressed, and that whether it's the mayor's office or new alders coming on board, there's just not enough time to really do the homework and do the work to really be responsive and ready for that first budget cycle. What are your thoughts on the impact of that?
I would agree. In my experiences coming on as a first-time alderman, the budget cycle it's a whirlwind. It goes so fast. But I'll also make this point. Right now, the Board of Aldermen doesn't have all that much control over the budget. So it was really just informational. If anything, you get to ask questions of departments that you might not otherwise get to ask. But it's the way we do budget right now puts far too much power in the mayors and in the Board of E&A. On that subject, I would be in favor of eliminating the Board of E&A. I think that's an antiquated way to do things and gives too much power to three offices that really shouldn't be sharing power in that way. On that same note, I'd be in favor of electing the president of the Board of Aldermen from within the Board of Aldermen. I've heard that idea batted around, and I think that's a great idea. And it's certainly a position that's supposed to be leading to the cohesion and the agenda of the board. And so it makes more sense for the board to select that than the population at large. But yeah, to go back to your original question, I think that the budget process needs revision overall.
Yep.
And so I'd be more interested in looking at those revisions than changing the date and hoping that solves anything, because I really don't think having more time for new aldermen would actually help all that much, while the Board of Aldermen doesn't have that much influence anyway.
Got it. Well, I was going to follow up with the board president being elected by the body and the E&A. So thanks for anticipating my next couple of topics and questions.
I've been watching your meetings, so yeah.
And Michael, those were largely the two issues we've reached some consensus around bringing to the larger group. We are pretty interested in the at-large, so we'll have further discussion with you on that, I think, to be fair. But and that's our remit. We've got a couple of other finer areas. We think perhaps, you could probably eliminate a couple of hundred excise tax issues that no longer are even around anymore and that don't exist in the present day, but that's not really probably helpful for charter reform. What other topics outside of our particular work group remit do you think are hitting a chord with you or important to look forward and support?
I've already communicated to this group the desire I hear in the city and the necessity of a Department of Transportation. I think the divide between BPS, planning, and streets, as well as our sidewalks, is apparent in our city and leads to detrimental effects for all of our residents. How that is structured, I think, is a very specific thing that needs to be worked out. But on all of these issues, my inclination is that the charter should be more vague than it is specific, and that we should leave the department structure up to the offices who are administering these things and not write in stone things that likely need to change. Part of the problem we have right now is that BPS was conceived when cars weren't even the dominant form of transportation in our city. So how is a department supposed to adapt and change, be kind of a living thing when very specifics of it are written into our founding document? So I think that that's essential, that we give that flexibility for our city to adapt and be flexible to the needs of our residents as we advance into the future and have different needs. On that note, I think there's certain county level offices that could probably be eliminated, if not rolled into appointments either by the mayor or, mayor confirmed by board kind of situation. And I don't want to get too specific as to which offices, but I think that's something that you all are probably looking into and can identify which offices might be superfluous or at least, need some revision. I'd also be in favor of giving the mayor power to hire and fire the personnel director. I think that that's essential for running a city and a professionalized workforce. Moving to a strong mayor system in general would be better for our city. I've heard city manager batted around, and I'm not completely sold on the idea that a manager would be better than a strong mayor, but I think we do need a strong executive branch to keep our city running.
Well, and to that point, specifically about the personnel director, I think there are a number of ways to achieve what people want to see achieved through a city manager by just creating more streamlined and more authority for the executive branch to hire and appoint personnel in a timely fashion. One of the questions I had related to wasn't the BPS, it was the county seats, the county roles. One of the challenges that we've run into is that's beyond the remit really of the charter commission because it's locked into the state constitution. That was one of my harsh realities when I finally got confirmed to the charter commission, because I had my list of things that I wanted to bring up as conversation. And but I think that is something that the commission should discuss, because if there are other structural changes within the city regarding personnel, we have to think about how those will interact and interface with a system that we don't necessarily have the authority to change or recommend changes to to our voters. So I just want us to keep in mind that some of those county roles that we don't necessarily have, that we can't put toward the voters because it's beyond the scope of the charter commission. We have to make sure that our changes that we do put forth still can interact with and function as a streamlined and good system of government, even if we don't have control over both county and city efforts at this point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's another reason to keep the charter more vague instead of specific, is because it allows us to have it be flexible to meet the needs of our city and how it's structured within our state. It's not that we can take what other cities do and copy paste that system into St. Louis. We're just a unique animal in so many ways. And so whatever we do needs to be specific to St. Louis. And it's great to take good ideas from other cities, but we do need to tailor them to fit our unique city.
So Alderman, you probably heard talk about the public advocate model. And it could be under the comptroller, it could be separate. What are your thoughts on having a robust watchdog / audit function like that in city government?
Yeah, I would agree that that's necessary. But I think right now having the comptroller have a vote on E&A is not ideal. It's the type of position, and similarly, get into a side thing, the requirements for the comptroller or for different offices in the city to have certain degrees needs to be eliminated. The importance of having a good office manager, somebody who is a leader who understands not just how to do the job, but also manage people, is essential. And I think that when we're talking about these positions requiring something like an engineering degree or an accounting degree, misses the point. Your top, accountant or your top attorney or whatever doesn't necessarily need to be the best at that subject. They need to be good at managing the various people underneath them that are good at that subject. And so that's why it's rare that you have a good leader and somebody who's very good at the subject as well. And I say this as someone who worked at Washington University in my previous life. Doctors are really fantastic at the research and everything else. Lab management, however, is not something they teach you in medical school. So it's just about getting a better system, better people management, because at the end of the day, this city runs on people. It doesn't run on degrees.
What do you think of requiring or not requiring city employees to be residents of the city?
Oh, the reality is that right now we need city employees and we need to get them from wherever we can. Um, I think it would be wonderful if we could make sure that our city employees had a familiarity with the city that a resident has. That being said, with a dwindling population, I don't think that we can stick to that model and succeed. Until we are back to being a city of 900,000 people, I just think that that's just a restriction that stands in the way of us being able to fulfill our duties to our residents.
For most, if not all positions, residency is no longer an issue because of the state law. So
I think we got preempted on that. Yeah.
we did get preempted on that.
And
Alderman Browning, can you talk a little bit more? I heard you mention, I think it was possibly for the personnel director having confirmation powers at the Board of Aldermen. Do you see value in that for all cabinet members or any other cabinet members, or would that be exclusive to the personnel director?
Again, I haven't thought too much about that, but it makes sense to me to have some kind of check. So having confirmation would allow us to ask questions about the different cabinet level people and what their beliefs are. Really check their credentials, make sure that they're not only capable of doing the job, but also, up to date on the latest things that we're hearing from constituents. Um, you know, as elected officials and as alder people, we have this connection to voters in that we go out and we knock the doors and we talk to them. We are at community meetings. I mean, I emphasize to people all the time. I tell them, I'm not the city. I am your representative to the city. And so that's a crucial check, if you will, on a strong executive is to have some sort of confirmation to make sure that we're checking in with people who are representatives of the public.
one of the issues we've heard is that the board, well, first off, changing the name to city council. Would you have any issues with that?
No objection. Nobody knows what an alderperson is.
Yeah. And then in the budget process, letting the board would also have the ability to increase expenditures or initiate the idea of expenditures, not just decrease it. Are you in favor of that?
Very much in favor. We need to have some sort of push and pull and not just pull.
And if you couldn't, if you got into a lockup over a new budget with the mayor, which could always happen, would you feel that a satisfactory or unsatisfactory for all solution would be to revert to the previous year's budget if it couldn't be done by like July 1st or something?
Yeah, I don't see a huge problem with that. I think that having some sort of fail-safe so that we don't end up without a budget or don't end up with people sitting idle at home unpaid. The way the federal government does it is a disaster for a lot of people, especially when you have a party who is obstructionist. But I hope we wouldn't get in that situation where the Board of Aldermen and the mayor disagreed that much. But I know it has happened in the past, so it would be good to have a fail-safe like that.
The
And-
fail-safe I've heard people talk about a couple of times is that we would revert back to the previous year's fiscal year budget while those debates were ongoing. Is that something you think could work?
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
And to get past the often, I'm sorry, Anthony, go ahead.
Go ahead. I want to change the subject slightly. So finish this conversation first.
Yeah, the one final item is how do you feel about not having ward directed money, but rather doing the budgeting for improvements, streets, that sort of thing, citywide in some sort of prioritized fashion? Or do you believe that we should stick with ward-based funds as well.
I feel very strongly that we need a citywide budgeting process. Ward capital, I understand the intention for why it was put in place, but it has led to a fragmented decision-making process. And all you need to do is drive around on our streets to see the result of that. It has created a situation where departments are not proactive about things because they are dependent on the alder people to fund projects. Why would you work on a project if you didn't know if it was going to be funded? It hides the fact that we're not allocating enough money to things like our streets. So when you take a pot of money and you split it 14 different ways or 28 different ways, it can obscure the fact that there was never enough money in the first place. I think ward capital has been detrimental to the city. It's a fragmented way of doing things, and it leads to really detrimental results for our residents.
And point of history, just to let you know, that was architected by an alderman who was then a mayor from your area, our area. Who decided to run for governor and said everybody should get the same so we don't argue this year.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
and I want to emphasize about everyone get the same. What we're doing right now is really inequitable,
Yeah.
especially since we redrew the wards. The northern wards have much larger territory, more streets to take care of. But that being said, if you think about how we allocate money, there are streets that see far more traffic in some wards than other wards. So it makes no sense to actually allocate the same amount of money. It would make more sense to have a department who is proactive in scheduling and planning this kind of thing, doing evaluation post projects to make sure that the money we spend is money well spent. I heard a story about when the Pope visited town back in the 90s, and we paved every single road the Pope was going to drive down. And then the next year, utilities came and tore up a bunch of those roads for planned projects that they had already had planned years in advance. So it's the kind of thing where, like, how much are we wasting money? How inefficient are we being when we divide all these tasks and have alder people who, by the way, are not experts on these things? I mean, you can elect a traffic engineer alder if you want, but should we have to? No, the city employs those. So I think it's important to professionalize these by putting the decisions in the hands of people who actually know what they're doing and can plan that in a way that efficiently uses our resources.
Although I've heard a lot of unanimity, and I think we all agree that Waterman Boulevard should probably get lots of streets money every year and really make it nice over there. So, but that's what everybody's saying in the meeting. So,
well, if you want an example, I've actually submitted 2 streets a request for what it would take to repave Waterman Boulevard. But this is the messed up system we have right now, is that instead of streets saying, hey, Waterman needs to get repaved, we're going to plan for it every 5 years or whatever. It's the alder people just either hearing from the squeaky wheel, or the alder people driving down the street themselves. When I first took office, there was an alley/street. It's kind of an odd thing, but it's called Donovan Drive. It hadn't been paved in decades. It was undrivable if you owned, say, a sedan. You'd have to usually get a higher seated vehicle. It got repaved. I allocated the money for it first thing when I was reelected, and I heard from people that said, that street hadn't been paved. I actually visited my mother's grave and told her, Mom, they're working on Donovan.
Wow.
And I thought that's
Wow.
and you can guess who lives on the street, right? I mean, that's the thing that really hurts me, is the way we do this is so inequitable. It leads to worse outcomes for all of our residents, but especially the residents who are not politically connected or not as well off.
Alderman Browning, in one of our meetings, it may have been a public meeting early on, someone mentioned having alderpersons who were focused on the work of the board as their primary professional job or role. We haven't talked much about that. We haven't heard much feedback on that since then, but do you have any thoughts around that idea?
Yeah. So are you talking about like requiring full time, or is okay?
Yes.
So
Yes.
absolutely. No problem with that. I pledged when I was running for office that I would make this my full-time job. I resigned from my previous job as soon as I found out that I had won my race. I would never think to try to split the duties. Not only is it just too much of a job to do part-time, but it also leads to conflicts of interest when you have all other duties that you're attending to. So, we have full-time salaries now. We even have staff. I think it's nothing wrong with requiring that full-time.
Thank you.
And Alderman, is there anything before you had the job that once you had the job that made the current charter structure particularly problematic, or could be benefited, that maybe you wouldn't know until you're inside? Is there anything like that?
Yes, I think everyone, a lot of people have a concept of the ward capital structure from the outside. But once you get an inside look, once you're actually in charge of allocating the money for different projects, you realize just how it leads to such poor planning, and it's very reactionary rather than proactive. So that would be one thing where I think I found out a lot more about it after being elected. There's a ton of stuff that I thought I could do that is preempted by the state, and that's not something we can really figure out with this commission. But it is regrettable. It does speak, though, to the need for our city to be flexible in how it handles things, because we never know how our state is going to hurt us. That's just the sad reality right now. And hopefully it changes in the future. We can all work for that, right? But right now, we need the ability to structure our city departments so that we can serve our citizens in a way that gets around some of these things that we cannot change. Our city's a growing, changing thing. Every city is. But if we really want to grow, and I think we need to kind of agree that growing needs to be our primary purpose, we cannot afford city services for our city if we do not add population. Then we need that ability to adapt. And that's why I'm really grateful there's a charter commission taking a look at this.
Christine, is there anything we haven't covered in our remit?
I don't think so.
All right.
Alderman, is there anything else you want to leave us with as parting thoughts?
Just that I think it would be beneficial. I'm not sure how you're thinking of doing the report or putting things on the ballot, but I almost wonder if there could be two categories of things that we know we want to do in a charter change and recommend, and other things that might need a little more work. I think of a Department of Transportation, for instance, as something that probably needs a little more work. And so a recommendation for that would be great, but leaving that ability for the Board of Aldermen or the mayor's office to really explore how that would be structured would be great. And again, that leads back to the leaving it vague so that we can do that. The other thought I had, though, is that instead of putting a list of changes for the charter on the ballot, I think it should probably be either an up or down vote on a new charter. That's how it was done the last time this was done. It needs to have a campaign to go out there and talk about it. Last time this was done, it was not actually campaigned on. It's a fascinating history, and it barely passed. But this is a chance for us to build something new that people will support and people can get behind. But if you put a bunch of individual decisions on the ballot, what I'm afraid might happen, and we know this, and I'm a political science major in college, so we know that when we put together surveys or things for people to fill out, if you put too many questions in a row, you get this thing where people just go yes, 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 or no, 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 no. And you could end up in a situation where people aren't thinking through each change. And so I think it would be better just to have a yay or nay kind of decision on a new charter.
Do you worry that one item could be a flashpoint or lightning rod and kill the entire issue, though?
It's possible, but the charter should be something that flows together nicely. It should be something where we are creating a cohesive document that, you know, it's written a certain way because another part of the charter depends on that. So allowing people to nitpick, you could end up with something where, say you put them as separate things, and you put one change as, we're going to put, you know, part of BPS under streets now, or whatever. And then you put another thing where you're going to say, we're going to put sidewalks and under this. One thing goes and one thing fails, and now you don't have the charter you wanted, and it's awkward and doesn't work well, and you just create more problems in the future. So like if we're writing a new document, we can create that cohesion, that consistency, versus letting people do it a la carte, which would end up with let's just call it an unbalanced meal.
Okay. So, let's see.
Thank you so much for taking so much time with us. I appreciate it. And thank you also for rescheduling.
Absolutely. Happy to talk. And if you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. Really appreciate the work you all are doing, and wish you the best of luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
So, Christine, I'm assuming that Alderman Spencer not coming means she agrees with all of our findings.
Obviously.
Yeah,
I'll send her a memo stating the
yes,
same.
just say thank you. Please, that's all you need to put. Thank you. Hey.
I see that Commissioner Sheridan's not here, and I can't tell if Commissioner Riley's still on. I know that.
I'm
there
here, I'm
was-
just driving.
Oh, great. Okay, well, be careful. Some conversation amongst some of the commissioners about the February 19th date, with respect to the suggested amendments possibly being a bit problematic, especially if we're going to have a community or a public hearing in March. So I wasn't sure what the two of you were thinking on that. Or if there's even interest on the part of enough commissioners to try and push that out.
Push what out?
The February 19th deadline that
Oh,
we discussed at the meeting.
which, no.
So I do think it could be helpful to push the date out. However, I also think we have some broad reflections at this point, at least I do, some broad reflections that we could put forth for at least some general conversation to kind of get a pulse of where we are. Also, for example, the president of the board, you know, things of that nature, I think we could put forth at kind of broad strokes to get some feedback on. Even I think the 19th is too soon for a more developed concept to put forth to the commission.
Do we want to put an additional working group meeting on the calendar, because we don't meet again until after the 19th?
I'm with Anthony. I think we should put our general thoughts at that point on there. And again, I put some forward. I know Anthony has as well, and we'll put some more, but I'd be delighted to have another meeting just to go over, here's the things we're going to push to the full commission. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, so with that said, today is the 8th. We have a week. So next week, how
Yep.
does the 15th look?
Let's see.
Do you think the 15th gives us enough time if we wait because the 19th is, I mean, that's a
The
Thursday.
following. Mhm.
Mhm.
I can make time for us Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday's kind of hectic for my schedule, but Monday, Tuesday, I can make time.
I could do Tuesday after 3:30 at any point. So no problem. And I have
Tuesday.
yeah. That works.
I can do 4:30
Perfect.
on Tuesday.
No.
4:30 on Tuesday.
Yes.
All right. Is somebody from the Charter Commission still on?
Yeah, I'm on. Why don't you check with your other work group members and just confirm by email your date and time, and I'll make sure that we have the video set up and the invitations and whatever it is that we need. So I'll look
Okay.
for something. If I could have something for tomorrow, that'd be great, because that'll give me time to get things going for Tuesday.
I'll send you
Tuesday at 4:30 is the presumptive.
right.
Yes.
Yeah, and the only other commissioner we need to reach out to is Travis.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Yeah. But I'll send an email and copy everybody here in the Charter Commission email, just to make sure that Travis is available. I think just in light of the time crunch that we have, if we can't get a time where everyone's available, we may just have to settle for whoever's able to make it and then communicate via email.
And that's great.
Sounds good to me.
Okay,
Good.
I'll get an email out right now. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Take
So
care,
long.
Scott.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye. Thank